Hello and welcome! My name is Fredrik Zillén and I'm a running technique specialist. Everything is relative. For example, is a marathon a long race? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask 100 randomly selected people in the nearest office building, the answer will probably be yes. And if you ask people who think it's fun to run races that are 200 miles, then a marathon is hardly a warm-up. Or the question, am I old? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask someone who is 95 years old, the answer will probably be no. But if you ask my grandson, the answer will probably be, well, in all honesty, it will probably be since he's barely 2 months old and he has not learned to talk yet. But with my 56 years on Earth, I have probably passed the peak in terms of my maximum physical performance. I will probably be a faster runner than my grandson even in 10 years, but in 15? When he's 15 and I'm 71? Probably not. But I'll certainly give him a run for his money for as long as I can. But let's talk about the subject of this video. Of course, there are many things that makes us slower runners when we are 70 years old than when we are 27. Oxygen uptake, muscle strength, thickness and stiffness of tendons, and so on. And of course, there are a lot of different things that makes us lose pace towards the end of a race when we start to get really tired. But today I'm going to talk about one of the things that makes us slower and less efficient as we get tired and as we get older. It's the same thing. And most importantly, what you can do about it. As I said in previous videos, there are 3 joints that do most of the work when you run. The power comes from the hip, from the knee, and from the ankle. If we start at the top, there are many parts that helps create the power, such as your hip, core, glutes, hamstring, and so on. In the knees, it's mainly your quads that stretches the knee, and in the ankle, it's mainly the calves that do most of the work. The question is now is whether, and if so how, the work at these 3 joints changes when you get tired. Some researchers in Germany wanted to study this and they gathered 25 runners. 13 of these runners were considered reasonably fast as they all did 10k faster than 37:30, while 12 of them were more normal recreational runners and ran the distance slower than 47:40. All the runners were men, which unfortunately is quite common in studies. Of course, it would have been interesting to see if there are any differences between men and women in how this works, but my guess it's kind of the same. All runners had to run 10 hard kilometers on a treadmill. The pace was set at 5% below their best 10k for the season. Then they measured where the runners produced the power. What happened was that the longer they ran, the less power came from their ankles. More and more work moved to the knee and the hip joints. In this image from the study, you can see what that looks like. The triangles that decrease more and more are the force coming from the ankle, while the circles and the squares, that is the hip and knee, have to work a little bit harder, producing more force and therefore increases slightly. According to this, the power in the hip and knee is maintained. The weak link is the power from the ankles. The picture applies to the slower runners. However, the same trend could be observed in the faster runners, even though they did not lose as much ankle power as the recreational runners did. And the bad news here is that the less power coming from the ankles, the greater the total cost of running will be. And this comes from the stretch shortening cycle, which is this rubber band effect that I have talked about in so many videos. And the best example of this is of course the Achilles tendon, which is pulled out and then provides a lot of energy return when it springs back. It is the body's largest tendon and is designed for just this stretch shortening cycle. When you get tired and lose the power from the calves, the rubber band effect also decreases. And then you have to work more and harder with your muscles. For example, by working harder at the knees with your quads. So it is a bit ironic, but when you get tired, you become less efficient and cost more energy per meter that you run than you did in the beginning when you had fresh legs and a lot of energy. So let's move on to what happens when you get older, because the study I just mentioned is completely in line with what a group of Finnish researchers came up with a couple of years ago. They looked at the same thing, the distribution of force between the ankle, the knee and the hip. But instead of looking at what happened when you get tired, they compared runners who were 26, 61 and 78 years old. What they found was that the muscles in the knee and the hip produced about the same amount of force at the same pace regardless of age. However, the power in the ankle decreased significantly in the older runners. There are probably two reasons for this. Firstly, the tendons are probably not as strong and stiff and elastic as they were in the younger years, which reduces the proportion of energy return. It is also common for people to lose muscle mass as they get older. Now that I have told you about the problem, the more tired you get and the older you get, the less efficient you are. You now want to know what you can do about it. We want to minimize the loss of power and maintain the amount of energy return from the ankles. And remember from the first study, the faster runners lost less energy when they got tired, which makes them more efficient towards the end of a race. So it is a bit about muscle strength. So it's good to strengthen the calves. And you can do that in a few different ways. Classic toe raises and all kinds of calf strengthening exercises are always recommended. But why not also look at the Achilles tendon? The leader of the German research team, Maximilian Sanna, recommends static exercises as they seem to have a very good effect on tendons, such as the Achilles tendon. He recommends static strength training, and that is not working with the movement but just getting a strong tension without moving the ankle. I'm going to show you in a second what it looks like. For the recreational runners, it can be good with, let's say, 3 seconds static and 3 seconds rest, and that you do it 4 times per leg in 5 sets 4 times a week. I have been recommending this type of static training for calves and mainly Achilles tendon to runners for many years. But I usually recommend slightly longer times and more reps. Of course, how heavy the weights you use are and how long you hold the static tension depends on who you are. The older and weaker you are, the lighter the weights and the shorter the time, of course. If you are unsure, it is always best to start carefully and then increase time and weight. But if you're younger and strong, I usually recommend sets of 10 times per foot, holding for 10 seconds and doing it in 3 sets. It's good to aim for double your body weight. If you can't do that, use less. And if you're stronger, 3 times the body weight is also okay. And it looks like this. And that's all for today. Remember to do your strength training and run beautifully. And I will surely see you in the future on a bench in a park where we old-timers feed the pigeons. See you! I really hope you liked that video, and if you did, you please click the like button and maybe also the subscribe button so you don't miss any more videos here on my channel. And if you are interested in my online course, you find all the information about that one in the description below.